Try that again.
Dr. Charney?
Here.
Dr. Nguyen?
Here.
Mrs. O'Donnell?
Here.
Okay. All you.
Great, thank you. Can I have a motion to approve the regular and executive session minutes of February 22nd, 2021, please?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion, and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, can I have a roll call vote, gentlemen?
We're starting with the people who are on Zoom. Dr. Charney?
Yes.
Dr. Nguyen?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mr. Davidson?
Yes.
Mrs. Hughes?
Yes.
Mrs. Kellogg?
Yes.
Mr. Nickel?
Yes.
Mr. Richard?
Yes.
Mr. Panica?
Yes,
Motion carries.
great, thank you. Do we have no student council report this evening? There's one item of correspondence to note on the agenda. It is there. So now, Dr. Moore, I'll turn it over to you for the superintendent's report, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Panico. I'm going to go a bit out of order from my list here because we have a few folks that we want to celebrate tonight. And I think some of them are here in person and at least one or two of them are on with us virtually. So I'm going to start by asking these students to come up with their parents. And if you could just sort of stand separately in separate groups. So Selam Ambar, are you here? Come on up. Allison Cedarbaum, you here? I saw you come in. Good. Julia Granado, are you here? Julia, I don't see. Oh, there she is. Great. Braden Quintard, are you here? Braden, okay. Come on, spread yourself out in groups up front. And we also have Vanella Ravila, and I want to grab her and see if she can join us online. Bear with me, guys. I just need you to be embarrassed for one moment. There she is. Okay, Vanilla, I'm going to bring you to the panel if you don't mind. And let's see. So there's Vanilla. Vanilla, if you want to turn your camera on, that's great. If you want to leave it off, though, that's up to you. There's Vanilla. All right, everybody can see you. So each year, about 1.5 million students across the country take the PSAT, and roughly 1% of them reach the stage that we are celebrating tonight for 5 of our students who are here with their parents and Vanilla on the screen behind them. They were semifinalists in the fall for the National Merit Scholarship Program, and tonight we're honoring them as finalists. So it's not always that we have this many make it to the finalist stage, and we're extremely proud of these 5 students. We had a recognition for them in school a week or 2 ago where they received their certificates from the National Merit Scholarship folks, but I wanted to offer the board an opportunity to say hello and congratulate them tonight, and we could maybe get a picture of all of them with Vanilla in the background as well. From here, we'll support them in applying for the final prize, which is the honor of receiving the National Merit Scholar Award, which is a $2,500 scholarship that will be conferred by a committee of college admissions officers and school counseling professionals. So across the 1.5 million students who take this test each year, they'll be vying, these 5 as finalists for this award will be vying for that prestigious honor. So I ask you all here to congratulate these 5 students for their tremendous achievement. Wish them luck. Hang out here for a minute. Let's try to get a photo, but let's give you a round of applause first. If Mr. Brandt, you get a good shot? Yeah, that's right. Smile, Vanilla. All right, thank you all. That's right. Yes, so Vanilla, you carried the smile for everyone because we all got our masks on. So thank you very much. So thank you all for joining us tonight to receive that honor, and as well, again, very proud of you as we move forward to support you on that award. So Vanilla, I'm going to return you if I can. Let's see. Okay, so all right, so thank you all. Now, next up on my report tonight, I would like to move to an update on our reopening progress and talk a bit about where we landed today with our most recent in-person expansion. So what I'll do is share my screen here and give you some information on where we landed today. So, oops. Here we go. So tonight's update, I've been updating you each month on different matters of our reopening this school year since the beginning of the school year in September. And I've always started with this representation of the three areas of priority in which we've been operating and trying to balance these three. The thing that struck me is if it was just about public health, and it wasn't about education or wellness or in the rest of our lives, recreation or anything else, if it was simply about public health, we'd all be still under quarantine as we were back in March a year ago. But we've had to balance our needs, particularly in student wellness and our educational goals, to do some very strange things this year. But we've been fortunate in our county and also here at our school to be able to continue to move toward a more normal operation. So tonight, I have some interesting things to share and some good news to share, and also a rundown of where we landed as a result of our most recent invitation to expand in-person instruction for our students. So the first thing I'd like to share tonight is that beginning this month, Hunterdon Central is going to host Hunterdon Healthcare's weekend vaccination clinic right here in this space on Saturdays and Sundays. So as they anticipate an increase in vaccination supply, they're going to be moving their operation from 2 other locations in our county to this space. Currently, they're only doing hundreds of vaccinations, and they're anticipating moving toward thousands of vaccinations in the very near future. Now, I'm also pleased to share that within this effort, they'll be keeping some vaccinations available for school staff across the county as well. So Hunterdon Healthcare has been an amazing partner in this conversation to not only expand the vaccination proliferation throughout our county for everyone, and I've frequently said every vaccination that happens helps us here at Central, but certainly we are most interested in vaccinations for school staff as well to continue to move forward on our expansion. So as the allotment increases, that operation will be moving here to our campus and will include some specific attention for the county's school staff. So we're very proud and pleased to be able to host that here at Central. So cases, I've each month updated you on our cases through yesterday. We have 109 student cases through this school year. That's 12 more since my last board report, and 31 staff cases, which is 4 more since my last board report to you all. And those numbers 12 and 4 represent smaller increases than we've seen in some other months. And I've talked about the spikes and coming out of the spikes, and you can certainly see the spikes here on our weekly graph that I've shared with you all before. So as we've gone through the year, the first peak there under the word among there on the title we saw was Halloween, then we went into Thanksgiving, and then we went into winter break. And we've been fluctuating a little bit in the weeks since, but the region has been solidly in yellow according to the state's classification system. And that did trigger us to begin to move toward expansion. So some fluctuations there in recent weeks, and we see that in the graph of the metrics from the state as well. The lighter shade of pink is the case rate. The next one down is the percent positive, and then the next one at the bottom there is the percent CLI, which is the percent of emergency room visits that are dealing with COVID-like illnesses. And you see, the case rate there is the case count, sorry, which is a count of cases per 100,000. The lighter pink is the most dramatic sort of change that we've seen. And that's, you can see it fluctuating there in the past few weeks, but we anticipate as the vaccine continues to proliferate that things will continue to stay in a place to support our continued expansion. So our expansion, I shared some information last time about what our plans were, and so tonight I'm sharing with you what the results of those plans have been. Today marked our first day of a large increase of students on our 4-day program in our phased approach at expanding in-person instruction. So today we welcomed additional students, and I'll share numbers with you. We asked students to begin, or families rather, to begin registering their students for this 4-day program a couple of weeks ago, and we've been preparing ever since. So those preparations have included not just tough and hard work with our teachers and supervisors and operations department to arrange layouts and all sorts of things, but also put some additional supplies, particularly barriers, face shields, out into classrooms, reevaluating all sorts of things in each classroom as we move to expand the number of students here each day. And lastly, reiterating precautions. So we've been talking a lot, Mr. Brandt's weekly emails, there have been announcements throughout the school day, and of course in all of our messaging out to the community that we've got to remember the precautions that have allowed us to be successful to this point, and we can't get complacent about those, or else we may find that our expansion is in jeopardy. So careful phased approach, I've used that term a few times. The thing that we're doing here is offering invitations for students on every couple of weeks, offering students the invitation to come in for the 4-day program if they're not currently on our 4-day program yet. And part of the phased approach is today, still right now, offering a 2-day program to the students who feel, families who feel that that's necessary for their student, and also continuing to offer under the governor's mandate a fully remote option for our students. We also are continuing to hold our remote Wednesdays. Not only are those full days, so we benefit from some additional instructional time there, but they also do continue to help us right now with contact tracing and cleaning as we learn the impacts on our system here of more students coming back here after winter break. So this phase, though, we've prioritized flexibility for parents in all of those choices. And that's been an important part of this approach right now. In the beginning of the year, we split our students into 2 groups, and we did that. We determined who was in group 1 and who was in group 2, and we've got all sort of even distribution of students as much as possible in all of our classrooms back in September and October. This time around, as we turned over those choices to parents to make the best choices for the children based on what their needs were, to do 2 days, 4 days, or fully remote, we're finding that we're kind of going back to where we were in terms of numbers of students that we had in the building in September, October, but they are arranged, they're distributed across classrooms a little bit unevenly. So in September, we had a tight control over the even distribution of students. Here, we're seeing an uneven distribution as a result of leaving those decisions to parents. And that's what we've had to contend with in terms of classroom layout and barriers and face shields and those sorts of things. The thing that we are certainly, and we've been open about this in all the conversations, I think, is 6 feet distancing is not something that we can achieve between all of our students at all times. That's something that we said back in September, though it's truer now, perhaps because of the numbers of students and the uneven distribution. I was interested to see today, though, the CDC beginning to talk about considerations for guidelines around 3 feet instead of 6 feet in schools. And that's a testament to all the work that folks in schools have done to ensure that all of these other steps get taken, and that stems the spread of the disease on our campus. So all of the steps we're taking together allow us to move forward and potentially with the CDC to begin to talk to us about 3 feet being sufficient. So numbers on where we landed as of, through our sign up process and into today as all of these students came aboard. So here's how the registration process ultimately panned out. With in the yellow bracket there, you see about 65.7% of the students here stayed on the program they were on during this first phase. So we anticipated that we'd have about 35% of our students staying on remote, and that's where we landed. 36, 37% when you add everything up. We also have students who stayed in our 2-day program, and we had a small number of students on our 4-day program, and most of them stayed on the 4-day program. 32% though moved forward into more in-person instruction, and the largest chunk there was students moving from our 2-day program to our 4-day program. So you can see 700 students moved from being here just 2 days to now being here 4 days. And in addition, you're seeing another 155 students, if you jump down to the bottom there, went from fully remote to 4-day. And so we're pleased about that. So the numbers of students now present on any given day, and I'll show you some figures on that in a minute, has increased. And then we did also have students stepping back, and that's, we anticipate that we'll see some back and forth as we move forward through this, that some students for various reasons may decide to go fully remote. That option is still mandated by the state, or as long as we're offering it, may opt for our 2-day program as well. It makes things complicated for us, to be sure, to have these 3 different programs running all at once, but again, with the priority on offering flexibility for families, we were ready and willing to take on the challenge of that complication. Moving 2-day to remote, we had about 50 students, although there are some number of students in there, not too many, who are quarantined as a result of close contact to COVID or being ill with COVID. So some of those folks will come back real soon for clearing their quarantine. So some additional numbers here just to give you a sense of what this now looks like today. And I've heard good things about the energy here today, which was one of the things that we wanted to accomplish with all of this. So I'll walk through some of these numbers and then make some quick points. So across the top, our remote students, last week we had about 1,100 students, 1,140 students on full remote. That was 41% of our student body. Now that's down to 1010, representing 36, 37%, bless you. So we see there, what we predicted was that we would remain at about 35, 36% full remote, and that's where we are right now. 2-day became a much smaller proposition for our families now. As you saw, one of the largest movements was out of our 2-day program into our 4-day program. So you can see that on those 2 lines. 2-day pretty much cut in half. And we ended up with a drastic increase in 4-day students. Now, the last row, at any given point, when you don't count the students who are just naturally absent for any reason on any given day, back in the last week, on any given day, we had about 34% of our students here. We're now up to about half of our students here, which is about where we were in September and October. So we typically see about 4% of in-person students absent. So you do kind of have to back that number out. So where it says here that 51.56% of our students are here for 4 days, on any given day, about 4% of our students are out absent. So that's actually closer to 47, 48%. Lastly, or not lastly, but what we see is that this is a few more students than we had on campus in September and October. So we started the year with about 50% of our students on campus, and that's where we've jumped to now in this most recent expansion. So we've been in that place before, we're used to it. It's good to have that energy back, but again, I do want to remind that students are more unevenly distributed on campus than they were back in September, October. It does, though, as remote instruction increased through the winter, Even though it's only about 150 more students than we had back in September and October, it's about 500 students more than we had last Monday. So that increase feels dramatic because it's a large increase from where we were just last week, even if it's not much of an increase from where we were at the beginning of the school year. So one of the points in this that we saw with the increase of remote instruction over the course of the winter, and a lot of schools across the state, schools like Central, saw more and more students opting for full remote instruction through the winter. The full remote program began to feed itself in the sense that many students were telling us that they were going out on full remote because their classes were getting smaller and there weren't enough people here. So as that started to snowball, it started to feed itself as it rolled down the hill. We're feeling with the energy that we noted in the building today and with the numbers that we've seen kind of jumping us back to September, October, the hope is that we've short-circuited that process, that process that was kind of pulling students out on remote because they were lonely here, that is now gonna be a thing of the past, and that we can move forward now on regular expansions with each couple of weeks. And I do want to point out, it's way too early to share specifics because it's only been a few weeks that we've had a decent number of students, about 250, in for 4-day instruction. But some of the impacts that we're seeing on students' grades from just those few weeks show us that they are benefiting from being here in person for more time. And we're going to continue to watch this. And in maybe next month's report, most likely I'll share some more data, more specific data with you on this. But the students who are here for 4 days are performing better, at least in their grades, than the students who are only here 2 days. And the students who are here 2 days are performing better in their grades on average than the students who are here or who are not here and are on full-time remote. So there's something in benefits that we're going to continue to explore, but that we're seeing early glimmers on with the student participation over 4 days. So students who are here are seeing positive rather than negative shifts in their grades. And that's hopeful, it's very hopeful for us. So next steps for us. We will, as long as case counts support it and other data support it, as I mentioned earlier, we'll continue to offer the opportunity for students to sign up and move into our 4-day program. So every couple of weeks, that invitation goes out and students can move into our 4-day program. And so we will see it, we hope, grow over time, though we do certainly recognize that as long as the full remote option is there, students may choose that as well, and we might have some fluctuation there. As we measure impacts, as we get confident, as we move deeper into the spring, thinking about that remote day, thinking about the value of 5 days, we have to begin to have those conversations about whether or not a remote Wednesday is necessary. So we see that that's potentially a next step for us, as well as removing the option for a 2-day program altogether, and ultimately saying to families, depending on the size and the need for that program, that it's either 4 full days or fully remote. Again, there are good reasons for the 2-day program, lots of good reasons for the 2-day program right now, but as time goes on, we're going to have to continue to measure that. Full days is still a very tough thing for a lot of schools across the state, and full days, require a specific relaxation of distancing. I said earlier that we are not achieving 6 feet of distancing in classrooms and other spaces between kids, but masking and all of these other things are still happening. Lunch, you're taking your mask off. A full day requires lunch, and when you eat lunch, you're taking your mask off. And right now, when your mask is off, unless you're engaged in very specific kinds of activities like athletics, where other kinds of precautions are going on, a full day with lunch requires more distancing on the campus than we can achieve. You look at this big space and you wonder, well, how can't a school like Central get 6 feet for lunch? But when you weigh in all of the needs of supervision, of the employees having to have their lunches, certainly of the number of people that we can ultimately fit in a space like this, it becomes a puzzle that we haven't been able to solve. So better conditions, relaxation of some of those distancing requirements when masks are off is what's required for us to get to full days with lunch service. Now, spike in cases will require us to respond. So if we do see local conditions present new concerns, or we see a spike in cases like at the levels that we saw coming out of our breaks, like our winter break in the near future, we have several different things that we can do. We can suspend that invitation and not allow anyone else to come in for 4 days. We can step back into our 2-day schedule if we find that that's necessary. We can do different things with quarantine in terms of right now we're requiring 10 days for close contacts. We can go back to 14 days. There are various steps that we can take of different levels of severity if we see a spike in cases. The most severe thing that we could do would be to shut down altogether and go fully remote. And we've been so fortunate that that hasn't been something that we've had to do for any more than a day or two for contact tracing. But if we see spikes and we have to retreat back into our 2-day schedule, it will be because we're seeing conditions that look like that orange level of activity. Now, our region could go orange, but we also have to keep an eye on our local conditions. Our region includes Somerset, Mercer, and Hunterdon counties. And if our region goes orange because those 2 other counties have quadruple the population we do in a different kind of experience, then we have to weigh that very carefully against what our local situation is. So there's a lot to look at moving forward if we start to see any spikes. The most important thing to reiterate, and we can't say it enough, and I fear that we say it so much that it isn't getting heard, although people are certainly cooperative, so I shouldn't say that, I guess, but we must, our community, if we're going to be successful here, if the schools in Hunterdon County are going to be successful in offering expansion and more in-person instruction, then all of those precautions that we're all supposed to be taking in school and out of school, we need to abide by them. So the masking and everything else that is being asked of everybody to continue to live with here as we hopefully get into more hopeful times with the pandemic, they are critical to keeping us being able to expand in-person instruction for our students. So please keep it up. Now, I've mentioned before, we're particularly worried about spring break because we've seen what happens when we go on breaks and come back and experience spikes in cases. And as I've said, if we experience spikes like we saw coming out of winter break, then I'm not confident that we can sustain a 4-day program for lots of students. We would be thinking and talking about stepping back to our 2-day program, and that's not a step anyone wants to take. I do want to remind everybody, New Jersey's travel advisory is something that our reopening plan going all the way back to last summer requires us to follow. So travel outside of our immediate neighboring states does require quarantine for most people, and that quarantine for most people is 10 days after their return. If you have any questions at all about that, please do contact our vice principals or your grade level nurse, or and lots of folks are ready to talk to you about what it means if you're traveling outside of the nearby contiguous states to New Jersey. If you travel, and we need everybody's cooperation on all of these things. Again, just to reiterate that point, we would expect anyone who travels to abide by those quarantine advisory rules. So I return always to the place that we start here, just reminding of these principles, reminding of the blending of them that makes our balancing so important, and also in a lot of ways difficult. Because there is a lot of priority in all 3 of these areas. However, the need to honor the educational goals that we have for our students, to achieve our wellness goals with students, we've been confident in our ability to navigate through all the public health requirements, and so we feel confident today. And I have to say, the energy in school today was wonderful. It was great to have so many more students back in school today. And we're just looking forward to that continued expansion. So I have more things to talk about certainly tonight, Mr. Panico, but I'll pause there in case there are any questions from the board on any of that material. And do members of the board, do please just speak up, because here, I'll put you all on gallery so we can see. All right.
My one question is around lunch, right? Lunch is the big roadblock between us and going full day. What needs to happen in order for us to go full day with lunch? And I don't know if you're prepared to answer that tonight, but is it the change from 6 feet to 3 feet? Is it breaking a lunch into sort of the block lunch that we were familiar with years ago here? What needs to change in order for us to be able to get there?
So we thank you for that. We are exploring different models of lunch to see if we can support numbers of students in sort of different blocks rather than a unit lunch, separate blocks of lunch. That's a model that we actually started looking at last spring when we thought it might be necessary to do that ahead of any closure, but the closures came up a little too quickly. The most important thing that could happen is that with a level of vaccination and quote herd immunity, that we would be told that the 6-foot distancing when masks are off is no longer a necessity. That would be that would be a really important development. I can't sort of figure out how optimistic I am about that though. So, but we do continue to play at the puzzle of lunch to see how and if we can make it work and still provide all the supervision that we need and all of the times for our staff to eat lunch that they would need.
Is there, I know at some point there was a discussion about not completely removing that, but lessening it. Do we have a measure yet of what threshold becomes attainable for us to move to full day, or no?
So threshold in
Feet of distance between unmasked students, because I know at one point there was a discussion on the federal level, I believe it was, for 3 feet.
Yeah.
Do we know if 3 feet does it, or is it lower than 3 feet?
So 3 feet could allow us to put a puzzle together that we could begin to think about lunch, and we might need to phase into that where it might be so many days a week and then we grow on that. But again, the thing that is different there is when masks come off. So when they talk about 6 feet versus 3 feet in schools, a lot of that conversation is still about masks being on. When masks come off, the game's a little different.
Okay.
And so 3 feet with masks off would be powerful. But again, I'm not sure how to, I don't have a prediction on whether that's going to happen or not. Yeah.
Okay, I'm
Thanks.
done. Any other board members? All right, I see none here. I see none remote. Dr. Moore.
Okay, thank you. So I will move next then. Thank you all for all of that. I have a couple of other items just to point out on the agenda for tonight. Tonight, we do have our school year calendar for approval for next year. So we're advancing a normal school calendar, hoping for a normal school year next year. I am hopeful for that. I have to remind everyone, though, that state law is such that where we had the opportunity to take some remote days for weather this year, and we took a mix of emergency days that were traditional snow days, and we also did some remote days for weather. As soon as this state of emergency is over, the state law is such that remote days for instruction are no longer allowed unless, under very specific circumstances. So I can't say whether or not that'll change, but I do want to just point out that next year, we might not have the ability to take a remote instructional day because of weather. If we're hopefully in full days, however, we would have our ability to do a delayed opening back in the toolbox. Right now, we can't do a delayed opening because that requires lunch. We have, before I get to Jimlyn for her portion here, we have our February Students of the Month listed here. Congratulations to all of them, an amazing group, and our Staff All-Stars, most recent crop of Staff All-Stars, fantastic folks. And again, nominations from teachers for the Students of the Month, and then student nominations for our Staff All-Stars. And it's amazing to see the number that come in. And I do also have here our HIB and suspension report for the month for your review. And with that, I will introduce here Jimlyn's portion. And I'm always tremendously thankful for Jimlin's work and the work of all the folks in the business office and all the department heads across the district who assist in the development of the budget each year. You know, we continue to weather a financial crisis of the pandemic, but also from continued and increasing state cuts to our state aid. And through all of that, you know, we were able to advance, I think, a most reasonable and respectful budget that sits within the state's 2% cap for increase on the tax levy. So with that, I will turn it over to Jimlin, and you should be able to share your screen. So you should be all set to go.
Oh, Benny is not there. Good evening, everyone. I appreciate having an audience to talk about the school budget this year. Oftentimes when I give this presentation, I don't have anybody here. So this is nice to hear. Okay. So I want to talk to you tonight about the 2021-2022 proposed budget. First of all,
This is still the superintendent's report. The motion on the budget comes after the residence forum for items on the agenda. So superintendent's report, residence forum for items on the agenda, then we move into the budget vote. Not the budget presentation, the budget vote. We didn't. This is the budget presentation, that's the budget vote.
okay. So what is in a budget? I'm not going to read every slide to you. It's up on the screen for you to see, but the budget is our district's financial plan to deliver and maintain the district's facilities, the mandated and non-mandated programs for the students we serve. Each year, the Board of Ed discusses and comes up with what are the objectives that we want to meet in our budget. To briefly go over these, we want to maintain compliance with all mandated programs. We want to continue to evaluate and implement programs in support of academic experience for all students. We want to plan and provide the necessary resources for the faculty and staff and students in preparation for college career as designated in the New Jersey State Student Learning Standards. To sustain and enhance district facilities for safety, academic experiences, activities, and environmental purposes through ongoing maintenance and long-range capital plan. And then we want to offer the community a fiscally responsible and respectful 2021-2022 budget with a 2% New Jersey state cap by implementing strategies to balance district needs while mitigating expenses to minimize future budget tax levy increases. So our statement of priorities is, I'm not going to read through each one of these to not take too much of your time tonight. This entire PowerPoint presentation will be posted on our district website following tonight's meeting. But the first priority is to maintain our school system. The next statement of priorities is raising standards and expanding opportunities. This is for all students. It's expanding teachers' qualifications, building professionalism, protecting our investments, and planning for our future. We start out by looking at the enrollment at Hunterdon Central. We have the advantage that we're a regional high school in that we can look at what the enrollments are at each of our sending districts and estimate pretty accurately what's the number of students who will be entering next year. So we're anticipating about 2,500 students, which will be a small reduction. And then this gives you the details, how many students we anticipate in each grade. Then we have our out-of-district placements, which are a crucial element of our budget as we're paying out-of-district tuition for each one of these students. So what has happened to develop our budget so far? The first thing we did was we evaluated the historic spending over the last 2 years, taking into account that we had a hybrid learning period to identify what were our additional needs and what are our evolving needs. Our educators have identified products, software, or methods that they have been using during this hybrid time that have been very beneficial to the students. And so we're going to continue some of those things into next year. They've also identified that some things that they did before were less effective. And so they've eliminated those things, replaced them with other things that they've discovered out of necessity. Then the next thing that happened is the budget documents were distributed to the departments. Each department supervisor looks at his or her budget history and then comes up with how they anticipate that they would need to spend their money for next year. The curriculum director, Jessica Cangelosi-Hay, met with each supervisor to identify what curriculum writing needed to be done, textbook purchases, and align those things with district initiatives. The department priorities the department requests were prioritized and evaluated by the curriculum director. Everything was returned to my office. An administrative team then reviewed and prioritized those extra requests. And the preliminary budget was discussed by each of the committees, the board committees, over the last week. And then we had the governor's address and the state aid announcement. As we anticipated, Hunterdon Central received a reduction of $320,000 this year. It was an anticipated reduction that was planned out 4 years ago. So that $320,000 did come as promised, that shortage, that shortfall. So then my office has been working to input the budget into the state software, and we have the budget ready to present tonight. So what I will ask is I will recommend that the budget be approved by the board. And once it's approved, it will be, the tentative budget will be sent to the Hunterdon County Executive Superintendent. They'll review my budget extensively, and then we'll bring it back to the public in the month of April. So what do we look at in the budget? We have curriculum needs to match the state standards. We have classroom instruction materials and software, professional development and memberships. We have equipment maintenance and repairs, consumable supplies, purchase professional services, field trips and competitions, student assessments, technology and research, co-curricular and athletics. Other components are student support, such as guidance, counseling, and the nurse office, school and district administration, staff salaries, health benefits, employer taxes, employer share of pension, transportation, security, building and grounds, legal, liability insurance, communication with the stakeholders, human resources, and business office functions. So when the budget is all put together, how do we pay for it? As you can see, nearly 80% of our school budget is paid by local taxes, by the local tax levy. Local sources, that little 0.91%, that's things like when we sell a school bus that's past its useful age, the amount of interest that we get on the money that we have in the bank, those kind of things. That's about 1%. Our state aid that the governor touted that he increased state aid to school districts, well, we were kind of on the short end of that this year. So our state aid is about 7% of our budget. Our federal aid is a tiny percent. That's for students who are attending at Hunterdon Central who are qualified for Medicaid. Then our capital reserve, that's our savings account. That's what we use to do capital projects, construction projects over the summer. So we'll be withdrawing from our savings account about 7% to do projects. And then the fund balance, that's what's referred to as the taxpayer give back. You've heard that term probably. The taxpayer give back is the unspent, the leftovers from a prior year budget that is rolled forward once the auditors have come in and checked and made sure all of the numbers are right. That 5.5% is used for a future budget. So that comes right off the top of the tax bill. And then these are the detailed numbers that made up that pie chart. And like I said, this presentation will be posted on the district website if you want to look at it. If you have any questions, feel free to drop me an email. So what expenses are included? The way the state budget software is written and the way our chart of accounts is written that we follow, there's general classifications of expenses. Regular instruction, special ed instruction, support services, administrative services, operations, transportation, employee benefits and taxes, equipment purchases, and then capital projects. So then this chart, this pie chart shows you how the expenses of the district total out, with regular instruction being about 26%, special ed being about 6%, that doesn't look like 6%, maybe so, 6%. Out of district tuition, 7%, and then benefits is 20%. You can see these tie back to those descriptions on the previous slide. So every year I say it, education is a people business. We're not buying raw materials and then putting them together and selling a product. What we do is we bring in people, we use their talents, and we educate kids. So the big expense that we have are salaries and benefits. So for Hunterdon Central's budget that I proposed for next year, 77% of the district's general fund will cover salaries and benefits. So it's the weekly salaries, but it's also the extra salaries for stipends, for after-school programs, for the extended school year program, all of those salaries added together. And then the benefits would be like the taxes, the pension payments, the unemployment insurance, disability insurance, and health insurance. So what is it that increased the budget this year, contributed to the increase? Special education out of district tuition is always an increase. Unfortunately, the out of district schools, the private schools can charge the tuition rate that they choose. So we're kind of at their mercy. We've taken great strides to keep kids on campus, to keep them educated here so that we keep those costs down. We've started our own autism program here on campus. We have very good special ed programs. So the kids that can stay on campus, we're keeping them here. School security measures. We installed another level of security at the door here. We're putting up a similar type entrance over at the 910 building. We have new ID system when visitors come on campus. Salaries, health benefits, transportation. There's definitely a driver shortage nationwide. So we're always looking for drivers. We're always qualified drivers. And then our contracts that we have with our bus companies where we go out to bid and they cover a route for us, that cost just keeps going up. Other employee benefits, last year has been a boon year. This last 12 months has been big for unemployment claims. And then we've had, as I talked about earlier, we've had our state aid reductions over the past 4 years, totaling $1 million difference in state aid. One of the things that the state encourages is shared services initiatives. So these are the ways that we have shared services with other municipal bodies, other school districts. For example, we provide nursing services to the Polytech next door, and then they pay us a fee for that service. We do contracted bus driving, home to school routes for East Amwell and Delaware Township School, and that helps pay for the overhead for our transportation office. So the list is here. Our proposed general fund tax levy, that's the amount that the taxpayers are asked to pay, is divided by the 5 municipalities that attend Hunterdon Central. So this year we're at almost $8 million. That's a 2% increase over last year. We're not taking any bank cap, and we're not taking any other adjustments that would increase that 2%. We're staying at the flat 2%. And then this tells you how the tax levy is divided among the 5 municipalities. The state of New Jersey gives us this equalized value for each of the municipalities. It's based on the assessed values of the homes in that municipality, and it's also weighted by the incomes of that municipality. So that equalized value is assigned by the state. The number of students who are attending high school is based on the census of students that all schools take on October 15th. And then based on just dividing math, we come out with what the share is that each of the municipalities pays of the tax levy. So the projected increase to the tax rate or decrease to the tax rate is in the right-hand column per 100,000 of assessed value of a home. This changes every year based on what the enrollments are and what the total number of enrollments, what percentage that municipality has of the total enrollment. The last portion of the tax levy that taxpayers are asked to pay, back in 2004, we passed a referendum to make improvements on campus. And this year, we've accelerated the payments so that this year will be the last year that we'll have a debt service payment. So we're paying off the mortgage. Big news for taxpayers and big news for Hunterdon Central. So the last payment will be included in the 21-22 budget. Then I'm going to talk real briefly about our reserve funds. Reserve funds are our savings account. Both the capital reserve and the maintenance reserve, they're both controlled by law, how much we can put in. So that's part of the money that's left over at the end of the budget year that we have unspent, we put into the savings. So the capital reserve can be used for capital projects that have to be approved for this by the state. Maintenance reserve is for those unexpected things, like we have a roof leak that we haven't budgeted for. We have a air conditioner that dies mid-year and we need to have it replaced. That's our savings account. In last year's budget, we had approved these projects listed here. So these will be completed in the summer of 2021. These projects are the projects I would like to include and recommend for inclusion in the 21-22 budget. And the work for these would be done in the summer of 22. They include science lab upgrades. We're expanding our curriculum and we are looking to upgrade the labs to be compatible with the curriculum. The 21st century classroom upgrades and faculty room upgrades would be in line with technology, would be in line with collaborative desks, those type of things. The 910 house office renovations would make that office more like the 1112 office. It would give privacy to students and parents who are coming in for meetings. It would separate out the kids who are coming for counseling so that they could go in and take care of their needs. And then to replace the mobile classrooms with storage facilities, you've all seen the 4 mobile classrooms that we have on campus that have been here for years. They're really the end of their useful life. And what the district is short on is storage space for things like the records, student records, things that were required to keep by code. So what we are proposing is to remove those 4 and replace that with some sort of a building with dividers that could be used for storage. So the next steps would be, I recommend that the board approve the budget tonight as presented. Then the budget would go to the Department of Ed for review and approval. It would be then advertised in the newspaper, and we would have our public hearing and adoption on the 26th of April. And then it would be posted on our district website and sent to each of the municipalities. That's. Okay. Does anyone on the board have a question?
Yeah, a couple questions for you. Did you say, and I want to make sure I got this right, the reduction in state aid was about 320,000 this
Ye-
year?
Yes.
Okay. Can you expand a little more on debt service and what paying that off means to the tax? What does that mean?
Okay. So our tax levy was about $56,000. What would happen is that 2.5 million, whatever that is, would get added to that. So instead of 57 million, it would be $59.5 million that goes out to the taxpayers that taxpayers have to pay off. When a school district passes a referendum, and I know Flemrare just recently did, that referendum is voted on one time, and then the taxpayers are obligated to make that mortgage payment, if you will, for the next so many years until it's paid off. It's only voted on once. Ours was passed in 2004, like I said. And so this will be the last year. So what will happen for the 2022-23 budget is that portion of the tax levy will go away. So the taxpayers should recognize a savings in their payments that they have to pay on their property tax.
Got it. Thank you. Why are we not renewing it? Would it be advantageous for us to renew that?
No, we don't need to renew that.
Okay.
And so we're paying the last payment on our mortgage. It's the last payment, or you're paying off your car. You've paid it off, you're done. Our district has been very prudent about building up our capital reserve so that we have money that we need. Some districts, pardon me, when some districts are coming to the end of their debt service, what they do is they take that opportunity to look around and say, what capital projects do I need to do? And then what they would do is go out for referendum, have the taxpayers vote on it, and do another capital project. We're in a very fortunate position because we've been saving our extra money, saving a little bit more extra money, saving a little extra money, so that when we need to, like I said, replace those trailers with a storage area, we have the money to do that. And we don't have to go back to the taxpayers again and ask them for more money in their monthly property tax bill. So I prefer doing it this way because I think it's fiscally prudent for the taxpayers to not keep asking you for additional money.
Got it. Thank you. One last, it's not really a question, it's more of a statement. On the capital projects for this year was the 910 house office renovation. I know when the facilities committee did a tour of that, there was discussion about waiting to see some proposals that come back sort of like small, medium, large. Is that sort of just like the placeholder for that?
That's exactly
Okay.
it. All of the numbers that are on here are rough estimates with a very broad scope look at the project. So that is the maximum amount that might be spent on that project. For example, a very good example is we have on our list, on our agenda tonight, to award some bids for some projects that we're doing this summer. And we had estimated the cost of those projects to be much higher than what the actual bids came in. By the time we got involved and defined the scope of the project, it narrowed down quite a bit. So the price of 2 of the bid awards that we're awarding tonight is probably less than half the price that we originally had estimated.
Okay, thank you. Other board comments here? I see Mr. Charney has his hand up. Sir, if you'd like to ask away.
Hi, thank you, Jim, for the thorough report. My question pertains to the science labs. What improvements or upgrades are going to be implemented?
So, Mr. Charney, we have a couple of different plans in place there, and again, as placeholders for that project, it hasn't been fully spec'd out, but the inclusion of more digital screens and interactive things for students to work with. More storage is always a concern, but we'll talk more in our Student Life and Program Committee and ultimately in open session as that project gets spec'd out. But we aren't anticipating it's going to go above the cost that Jimlyn outlined in the project list for capital reserve.
We've talked in the past about developing programs on campus that would keep more students at Hunterdon Central and fewer students going out of district. And so we will in the future be talking about programs in the science department that would encourage students to stay here.
Yeah, and so our biotechnology program, for example, is expanding its number of sections that'll require some more lab spaces and lab facilities. So that's part of it as well. And as we continue to grow those STEM programs, we'll see the need for not just more lab space, but refreshing our existing lab space to keep pace with what the curriculum is asking of all of that.
Thank you. Any other board members?
Do we have any expectation that any of the federal money that's been allocated recently or over the last year and a half is going to impact our budget?
We do. We have received notice that the ESSER 2 money will be coming our way. I believe it was $203,000. $203,000. And the thing about it is I don't want to build that into our operating budget because the uses of that are limited to restarting school, providing supplemental education for kids because of learning loss. So those are things that would be one-time specific year spending. And as a rule, you don't want to use grant money to provide the basic needs. You want to supplement with grant money because when it goes away, then you're stuck without funding. So yes, we're in line for a good deal of money for that, for the ESSER 2 CARES money, just like we received some CARES money this year, but we would not include that in our operating budget.
Mr. Charney again.
So I'm glad you brought that up. CARES money from the federal government is designated for learning loss. What are our plans for how to meet that learning loss? And do we know what the learning loss is?
So primarily our plans for federal money in support of kids who might be needing some additional support is exactly that, towards summer programs and after-school programs with stipends for teachers to work in a tutoring kind of environment and in a personalized, individualized kind of environment to support those kids and help bridge them into their next year's course. So the specific skills that each student might need In that kind of context, we haven't measured that all just yet. We do have, though, some programs underway on this agenda. We can talk about it in the personnel section, some programs that we're appointing some staff to help begin that process of working with students that we've identified at risk and giving them extra support. And it's not, there's also, in addition to learning loss, additional expenses that come with our purchase of Zoom, the additional expenses in our operations department. So there are a lot of uses for that money to cover extra expenses that we've had to incur through the pandemic that weren't planned in our budget. So there's a lot. In the coming weeks.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Anybody else from the board? All right, seeing none, I know, are we working on audio and video on the Zoom? Just the video? Okay. With that, is that the end of the report, Dr. Moore?
Yep, my report's all done. Thank you, Mr.
Great.
Panico.
So at this point, we'll turn it over to the residence forum for items on the agenda. These are items that you see in the following pages on the agenda. The residence forum is a maximum of 30 minutes. Everybody will be asked to keep their comments to 3 minutes or less unless no one has spoken or everybody is done speaking and people can speak twice. We do have people in the audience in person. We have people on the Zoom call and we have people submitting items via a form. So we're going to go through kind of a round robin. We will start here in person. I see one hand. If it's an item on the agenda, please step up to the microphone, state your name and address, and speak, please. And just so you know, the form is closed because public comment has started.
My name is Franklin Tenney. I live in Raritan Township. I am here tonight because I wrote to the board a couple weeks ago, 2 Fridays ago. Superintendent Moore sent out an email alerting the community.
So I don't want to cut you off. These are items on agenda items. So, everything that's the action items on the agenda.
My communication is on the agenda.
It's not an action item. I'll let this go. It's not an action item on the agenda, but I know that we have a lot of people that want to speak. So we'll do this. And then I'd like to just wrap this and then move to.
A lot of people thought
listen, I'm going to let you guys speak. I just want to this. We can get through the items and everybody can talk. Go ahead, sir. And I'm respecting him, sir. No. Sir, because again, there is no spirit without respect is correct.
I might remind you that you have no idea what I'm going to say.
I'm asking what item this is on the agenda. You said it was about your correspondence. I'm going to say go ahead with it because you're up and speaking, and I want to respect you and give you the floor. But I'm going to ask for if future comments, if they're not about motion items, we'll move them to the end. It'll be about 10 minutes from now.
Was there a motion to change the agenda?
Please proceed. No, there was no motion. Why was there a motion to change the agenda?
Then why did we go out of order?
We didn't go out of order, sir.
We did.
We did not.
We did. The public forum was before.
Excuse me, if I could clarify as board secretary, the correspondence that's listed on the agenda is it's just for record purposes. It lists, excuse me, it lists the correspondence that the board has received.
Guys, I don't want to fight over semantics of order of agenda items. We did a superintendent's presentation. Please speak. I want to move through this and we can be done.
On February 26th, Superintendent Moore sent out an email alerting the community to a grave danger to our community, where apparently a student, a parent, a community member, or someone that lives in a different country created a White Student Alliance Instagram group. Mr. Moore imputed intent, said it was an apparent mockery of another group, and alerted the police. to ostensibly constitutionally protected speech. So alerted the police to a student, a community member, a parent, or someone who doesn't live here, which I don't know what resolution would happen in that case. This board and this administration has one job, and that's to get our children in here every day, in person, with everything that we pay for. So to sit here and lecture us after you tell us that we're going to have a 2% budget increase when you haven't been in school in a year and have been providing the services that we pay for is laughable. I wrote a book here, but what I have to do in my correspondence with Mr. Panico, he explained that this was board business because it was a HIB investigation. And I said, great, I know all about that. There's a very specific procedure, and as you all know, a HIB investigation does not have to be prefaced by a complaint from a student. When any school employee knows about anything that fits the HIB matrix, they are required by law under a condition of employment to report it. So before coming here tonight, I went through Mr. Moore's email, and one of the egregious violations was the Instagram account was using copied text and other elements from officially recognized student groups and began following community and central affiliated accounts. I'm not sure under what part of law that falls, but it was very dangerous, as he said. We have on Instagram, and you can all look this up. This is today. It's HCRHS boys. It's what we would have called when I went here silliness. So it's girls rating boys, posting apparently clandestine pictures of the boys. Sexism at least, demeaning definitely. As far as I know, and I've counted the HIB investigations in the last year, there are not enough to go around to cover what I'm going to give you tonight. So selective enforcement, you know, is discrimination under the law. So next meeting, I expect to hear that there were either a bunch more investigations or a reason that there weren't. This one is HCRHS
He's just in the microphone. Sorry.
confessions, but it's using a pornographic spelling. It's a private account. Kids clued me in on what was there. This is HCRHS Uncensored. And while Superintendent Moore is onto the grave crime of having an affinity group that's not sanctioned, this one alleges dozens of actual crimes that happened here at Hunterdon Central. Rape, teachers using racial epithets directly to students, a Muslim student being dragged into the bathroom and being fed pork and alcohol, dozens of crimes. This is up today. This is followed by some teachers, some staff members, tons of students. I want to hear what you did next meeting. This is HC activists, again, followed by many of your social justice warrior teachers. This is a very simple message. It's F, C, and K with a vowel that is not A-E-I-O.
Mr. Lindsay, can you speak into the mic? I really can't hear you, and neither can the people on the call. Just speak into the microphone, please. That's all I'm
Well,
asking.
I'm wearing a mask over
I can hear
35
you.
feet from everyone
Yeah,
else.
I can hear you. In the
It says F off.
Yep.
That's the
I can see it,
HCRHS
yeah.
activist page that is followed by your teachers. This is HCRHS Antifa using the logo, the initials, everything. Images of violence and people being beaten up, threatened with guns and swastikas everywhere. This is an official, using the official graphics, the official logo. This is HCRHS Rec B-Ball, followed by a whole bunch of teachers. This is all during Superintendent Moore's tenure. Here's a little caption that got a bunch of likes. Owen crosses Brad into next week. Afterwards, the two Jews show their respect. I assume that doesn't fit a HIB anywhere? Or you can let us know how this was disposed of. HCRHS facts, explaining the sexuality of some kids. how certain kids, what physical attributes allow them to get more derogatory terms for women. But what we're talking about is that some kids, maybe here, maybe across the planet from us, use the logo and the initials to make a white students alliance, maybe in jest, maybe not. Superintendent Moore has imputed malice to it and called the police and used our public resources and started his own investigation here. Well, we pay for those resources, and there is no charter to do that. Superintendent Moore has no authority whatsoever to regulate Instagram, because if he does, I'll tell you what, my kids have been harmed by this, and I'm prepared to spend a lot of money going after this school and this board. You better get your priorities straight right now. You better get your priorities straight. I don't care about Superintendent Magazine cover stories about new anti-racism policies. You have kids suffering. We have out of control suicide in this district. And I don't like to blame, and I don't like to draw conclusions, but Mr. Panico, in your press piece about running for assembly, one of your accomplishments was hiring Superintendent Moore and lauding the fact that he was challenging the status quo everywhere. Well, guess what? I went here, as you did. My dad went to Flemington High School. My grandfather went to Flemington High School. It was a good place. I don't know what we needed to challenge the status quo about, but this isn't getting it done. This is disturbing. And I expect next month to have the board tell us which groups, which races, which religions, which sexes, and which gender identities are accepted by this board. Because then we can do away with any inadvertent violations of kids starting white students groups or Northern European students groups or vegan student groups or meat eater student groups, and we don't offend anyone that way. But if you don't get Superintendent Moore under control, it's going to be very costly to this school and all of us taxpayers.
Mr. Lentine, can you just leave, Mr. Lentine, excuse me, sir, it'd be helpful to me if you would leave those behind. If not, if you could just, I'll connect with you offline. Thank you, sir. All right, we have two people online. We'll go one there because we had one person speak. So Noreen, whoever Noreen is, can you just come up, give me your full name? Do I need a address for the record? Okay, Noreen, we just need first and last name. Record, please. This is, again, reminder for items on the agenda. So items on the agenda, action items. Do you want to pull Noreen?
She is.
Okay,
yeah.
Noreen, you can unmute and speak if you are ready. All right, hearing nothing from Noreen. Dr. Moore, if you want to move that back down, flip over to one more in the room if we have somebody else in the room that would like to speak about items on the agenda. Items on the agenda. What? Come on up. Just state your name. We need it from the podium so we can hear online. Just state your name for the record. And then, Mr. Klein, do we need to change out the thing? Okay.
I don't know if I'm supposed to speak now or at the end.
What's it regarding?
It's regarding the bias and sensitivity training that I had to go through.
Okay. If you sign in, I'll get you first up in the items off the agenda because I don't think we have that as an item on the agenda. I'll get you first up if that works for you. Yeah. Can we just move? We'll just blow through these agenda items, then we can go to that. Does that work for you? Can we just do that? Give me 5 minutes just to get through the agenda items, and I'll get you first up. Thank you so much. Dylan from the audience, anything on the agenda? Remember, these items on the agenda.
I have a comment off the agenda, so I'll wait.
All right, thank you. All righty. Any items on the agenda? No more in the audience, no more on the virtual Zoom. Can we go to the Student Life and Program Committee report, please? Oh, budget vote. Okay, can we have the, can we move to adopt the resolution under J as listed in the agenda, please?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Can I have a roll call vote, please, gentlemen?
Okay, we're going to go with the people who are on Zoom first. Dr. Charney,
Yes.
Dr. Nguyen,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donnell,
Yes.
Mr. Davidson,
Yes.
Mrs. Hughes,
Yes.
Mrs. Kellogg,
Yes.
Mr. Nichol,
Yes.
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Mr. Panico.
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. Student Life and Program, please.
Okay, Student Life and Program Committee met a couple weeks ago. We have a couple of items on the agenda to move for approval tonight. As part of my report, I wanted to talk about the following. We have one student who will be attending from North Hunterdon Voorhees. Transportation and tuition will be responsibility of the sending district. We also discussed the school calendar. Ms. Cangelosi-Haight explained that the school calendar was developed in consultation with K-8 sending districts, and this will be on approval for tonight's agenda. Mr. Brandt did a presentation with regards to a new student activities club, Women in STEM, that will be run by Mrs. Doyle, one of our science teachers. And it will be open not only to students in the Science Honor Society. We also discussed student representation on the Board of Education. Dr. Moore explained that he wanted to begin a conversation with the board about having student representatives to the Board of Ed. He has been speaking with the New Jersey School Boards Association and other districts about models that are in place. And Mrs. O'Donnell noted that this was an important idea, suggested that we have a committee of students to represent various groups or facets of student life at Hunterdon Central. We had an update on the expansion of in-person learning, which you saw tonight with part of Dr. Moore's presentation. Mr. Brandt also provided the committee with information about a Bridge Here program. Governor Murphy signed into law establishing the Bridge Year pilot program, purpose of which is to provide students in the graduating classes of 2021 and 2022 opportunities to offset disruption to learning opportunities. Finally, we have policies for first read. These are policies required by the state, including eligibility of resident, non-resident students, a seizure action plan, and transgender students. That's it for my report tonight. So with that, I'd like to move 1.1 to 1.4 for approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Dr. Charney,
Yes.
Dr. Nguyen,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donnell,
Yes.
Mr. Davidson,
Yes.
Mrs. Hughes,
Yes.
Mrs. Nichol, I'm sorry, Mrs. Kellogg,
Yes.
Mr. Nichol,
Yes.
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Mr. Panico.
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you so much. O&T, please.
Operations and Transportation met virtually on March 9th. We discussed some of the construction projects, including what Jim spoke about earlier, the security vestibule and locker room conversion, which we're looking to approve for Venus Tile and Marble. A couple other items of note: we're getting a donation of a Steinway piano donated by former teacher Bob Furta. Also, a donation of a Jasper Johns framed print from Tony Eileen Head. And then tonight we are looking to approve on first reading policy for procurement procedures for school nutrition programs. Everything else as on the agenda. And with that, I'd like to move items 2.1 through 2.11.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? I know you pointed out, Mr. Nichol, but I'd like to also point out 27 and 28, which are the donations. One of them is pretty sizable, so we thank Mr. Furter for that. The other one, Tony Eileen Head, thank you for the frame print. Thank you guys so much for them. That's what makes this place keep moving forward. Any other discussion? I see none online, so can I have a roll call vote, please, Jimmy?
Dr. Charney,
Yes.
Dr. Nguyen,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donnell,
Yes.
Mr. Davidson,
Yes.
Mrs. Hughes,
Yes.
Mrs. Kellogg,
Yes.
Mr. Nichol,
Yes.
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Mr. Panico.
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. Personnel, please.
Personnel Committee met virtually on March 10th. We had the presentation on the budget from Ms. Corbin. Then we went through the following motions. We have 3 retirements, all of whom have substantial time with the district. We thank them for their service. We wish them good luck in the future. We have 1 per diem appointment for a new substitute teacher. We have some summer curriculum appointments. We have 1 AM supervision appointment. 3.5, we have an hourly rate for some tutoring in our STARS program, which is for some at-risk students that Dr. Moore was referring to earlier. 3.6, we have an appointment of a test proctor. 3.7, we have the appointment of Jessica Doyle for 2 new clubs, one of which Mr. Richard just spoke of, Women in STEM, and the other Student Movement Against Cancer, both unpaid positions. 3.8, we have 2 new spring coaches. 3.9, we have some sixth block stipends in Spanish. Interim approval was given by Dr. Moore on those. 3.10, 3.11, we have some professional development workshops in and out of district. 3.12, 2 leaves of absence. 3.13, 1 revision for a teacher in the Spanish department. 3.14, we have first read on a policy, emergency and crisis situations to include our substitute teachers in our safety and security training. And 3.15, we have a motion to approve Mr. Brandt to serve as acting principal through July 25th of this year. So with that, I'd like to move 3.1 through 3.15.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Just want to recognize our 3 retirees here.
Yeah,
Karen
definitely.
Egan in my department is just been a fantastic executive assistant. I kind of I'm not sure what I'm going to do without her, to be honest, but she's earned her retirement, to be sure. Mike Hafler, head mechanic, I've always been comforted to know that he's in there bright and early in the morning, especially on our rough weather mornings, taking care of and prepping our buses and getting everything out on the road. And Jane is one of our family and consumer science teachers down there. I walk by her room often, and she fills that hallway with wonderful smells of the food that all those folks are cooking in there. And I loved always going to her room and the room in the family consumer science department, but in particular, there was in the past few months something of some normalcy in our students in a home home cook kind of setting there, making food. It felt like a normal school year whenever I was in her room and they were preparing pancakes or cookies or anything else. So I'm going to miss all of the chats and good food that she afforded me. So 3 folks that we will miss, but who all have earned their next steps.
Thank you. 59 years combined there.
Yeah.
The other thing I just wanted to point out too, Mr. Brandt, you're on board till July 25th. Any further discussion? Hearing none in person, seeing none remote, can I have a roll call vote, please, Jim?
Dr. Charney,
Yes.
Dr. Nguyen,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donnell,
Yes.
Mr. Davidson,
Yes.
Mrs. Hughes,
Yes.
Mrs. Kellogg,
Yes.
Mr. Nichol,
Yes.
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Mr. Panico.
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. Additional business or board comments at this time? Ms. O'Donnell?
Yes. I'm sorry that
I think you are muted.
Yeah, Ms. O'Donnell, you're muted right now.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can.
Okay, great. I apologize. My Zoom is being very glitchy for some reason. Yeah, just to report on the Racism, Equity, Diversity Committee. This week, well, initially diversity training sessions for staff over the past several weeks. It's providing many opportunities for conversation, some of which is very difficult. Administration continues to work with the HCEA Anti-Racism Committee and others to continue to allow for experiences to internalize these discussions into work for students. Our building administrative team under Mr. Brandt is working with a consultant to further improve our bias incident reporting and intervention efforts. As the indoor gathering limit increases, we look forward to reconvening our broader community committee into events and discussions. And our work to hear and address concerns about our spring musical was really an opportunity and represents the beginning of new structures for gathering student feedback and input. Our administrators continue to learn lessons from this work with our students to develop formal committees and forums for students to help close some of our blind spots. And, you know, lastly, I would just like to add that our committee had some good recent discussions about hearing concerns about not enough student involvement in this work. So we've, you know, really talked and agreed and are looking at ways to get more and more student engagement and really get their voices heard in crafting the mission and the vision for this work. So we really look forward to that. And that's all that I have.
Thank you. Any other board members? Seeing none in person, seeing none online. Now we'll go back to residents forum for names on or off the agenda. Same sort of system as last time, maximum 30 minutes. Everybody has to keep their comments to 3 minutes. Raise your hand if you're on the Zoom. I do see an order there, so we're going to round robin, in person, Zoom, and then we do have some through the form, which is closing now. So we'll kind of hit it in a rotation. If you are on the phone, press *9 to raise your hand. And then the one thing I will say too is there's one that I'm going to skip on the public comment form. Mary Beth Walsh. Okay, perfect. Well, you're going to skip it because you're here.
You're going to start with me.
Robin, tell me your name, please.
My name is Mary Beth Walsh, and I'm from Raritan Township.
Got it. Sorry.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about what matters." I've seen part 1 of the presentation on bias and anti-racism training. I'm a former educator, and I've been employed by Central High School for 3 years. I enjoy my job, and until Wednesday the 10th, I felt I worked with a great organization. That changed very quickly when my coworkers and I sat and listened to a presentation in the auditorium. The presenter informed me that because I am white, my white privilege makes me inherently racist. And worse yet, that I am a white supremacist. On November 16th, this board unanimously approved a change to our discipline policy that takes a no tolerance stance against bias incidences. Training designed to increase staff literacy and bias and prejudice, to better equip our counselors and other specialists to assist students who have experienced race-based traumatic stress, to help club advisors and coaches ensure a safe place, provide a sense of community, and an opportunity to share experiences and make positive changes. Well, that all sounds wonderful, but that is not what I saw and heard during a presentation in the auditorium that my coworkers and I were mandated to sit and listen to. We were silenced, unable to respond or ask questions. We were simply meant to sit and listen as this individual redefined white supremacy in order to fit the narrative. I'm trying to decide what upset me the most. The fact that my employer, my school board, the administration previewed this and didn't think it was insulting highly racist, extremely biased, and wrought with prejudice. As an educator, it's not difficult to foresee the pitfalls that lie ahead if this is the basis for teaching and supporting our students in ensuring a safe place, a sense of community, and an opportunity to share experience and make positive change. As a taxpayer, I'm outraged that a single penny was spent to secure a platform of hate and continued racial divide. As a member of this community, a woman, a mother, how dare you compare me to the lowest extreme of white radicalism and expect me to bow down and agree that that represents me? Thank you. I am certain, though, as an employee, I'm highly offended that my employer can create and justify an environment in which I felt silenced and attacked. You've taken my joy, you've added to my stress, and now my work environment feels suddenly hostile. History is written. We cannot erase it. We cannot change it. We can learn from it. We can move forward with the promise that we will never repeat the injustices of our past. I will not listen to another presentation designed around the theory and platform of white privilege and white supremacy. It is harmful. It is not progressive. It is hateful and filled with presumption. I'm challenging you to do better. Reach further. Find the right platform on which to stand. Show our children that every generation has more to accomplish in order to do better than the one before them. Choose a platform that unites, not one of division and payback. One last quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I have decided to stick with love. Hate is too great a burden to bear.
Thank you. Alrighty. I said I was going to go in person, Zoom call, and then we're going to go to the forum. Thank you, folks. Thank you. I said I was going to go in person, Zoom call, and then to the forum. So Dylan Martin first up on the Zoom call. So Dylan, if you are ready, you can unmute yourself and speak, please.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. My name is Dylan Martin. I'm a social studies teacher at Hunterdon Central, as well as a member of the HCEA Anti-Racism Committee. I'd like to begin by thanking the board and our superintendent, Dr. Moore, for recognizing the need for anti-racism initiatives at our school, but also for actively participating in addressing these needs. Among other measures, the partnership with the Anti-Racism Committee and the inclusion of professional development for our staff have been positive actions taken by both the board and the superintendent. However, anti-racism work is never complete and must be constantly tended to. As a teacher and committee member, I hear the urgency from my students and teachers firsthand. When students share with me that they feel dehumanized, discriminated against, and simply exhausted, they need to know that our school and community know that they matter. Systemic racism is exactly that. It's systemic. It is uplifting to see Dr. Moore and the board's acknowledgement of this systemic problem and their decisions to carry out the state mandates and work towards a safer school community rather than do nothing and perpetuate this harmful system. To say that racism is only perpetuated or perpetrated by a select few individuals who commit acts of hate while ignoring and dismissing the root of the problem is to demonstrate a grave misunderstanding of our history and rejection of science and facts. But more significantly, it is also to deny the feelings and pain of our own children within this school. As a school, we have a moral obligation to serve as positively contributing members to not only our community, but our country and our world. Reducing bias and eliminating racism is not a political issue. I am glad that our community is taking these measures that acknowledge and repair the harms caused by this reality. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up is one of the ones from the forum. It is Jamie Kraus. Jamie Kraus says, I understand the hesitation and discomfort that the discussion of racism brings. Like many white people, I have felt that I am not racist, that while I saw color, it didn't affect how I treated or befriended others. Being around various people of color didn't really faze me, but like all humans, I carry internal biases about a variety of factors on a number of levels. When I started my anti-racism journey, I began by looking at how my upbringing, including the area I grew up in, could have influenced those biases. That in turn led me to learning how racism has permeated society within our country. One of the biggest things that I learned is that racism does not focus on how an individual behaves, but on how rules and regulations affect the majority of non-white Americans. How even the phrasing I just used, non-white, places whites in a higher hierarchical level than the people of color. And thus, using such phrases in my classroom can prevent some students from feeling the trust and safety that they should have at school. If nothing else, our discussions of racism and anti-racism can help each of us better understand our internal biases, whether they are based on race or not, and how they contribute to the school environment. Even more importantly, they can help us recognize and therefore address both overt and subvert issues of racism in actions with each other and students not only within our school, but also within our community. By addressing these issues of racism and bias within our classes, school, and community, we're able to ensure that all students feel safe and are able to learn. The school's initiatives in this topic are helping equip faculty, staff, and students with the skills needed to ensure that no student feels unwelcome or uncomfortable in the classroom. It enables us to be able to have difficult conversations when there is a concern and allows all students, regardless of race, sexual orientation, learning difference, or gender, to receive high-quality education that Hunterdon Central is known for. Flip back to in the room. Anybody in the room want to, Mr. Bartley, come on up. We don't need the address, just your name. If you just say your name for the record, please. Thank you.
My name is Sean Bartley. I live in East Amwell. And I would like to know, because after we sat through the line items on the budget, which line item is being used for monitoring students' social media accounts? Because I didn't see it. I probably just missed it because I was sitting kind of far back. I'm sure it's on there because we're doing it. I'd just like to know what item number it is. After saying that, I'd like to point out that in June of 2020, a panel for the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 3rd District, which New Jersey falls under the jurisdiction of, ruled unanimously in the case of Minoy Area School District versus BL, docket number 20-255. The dissenting justice wrote that the school district cannot leverage its coercive power, which is an ability that allows an authoritarian figure to influence an individual using fear or threats as incentive. Speech that falls outside of school-owned, operated, or operated channels falls out of their purview. Continuing that the primary responsibility for teaching civility falls with the parents, not the school. I think that the school might need to rethink their decision to monitor social media. That's it.
Thank you. Zoom, we have Mr. DeTample. One moment. All right, Mr. DeTample, you can unmute and speak, please.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Board President Panico, members of the board, and Dr. Moore. My name is Darrell DeTample. I'm a social studies teacher here at Hunterdon Central. First, thank you for this opportunity to speak in support of the need for anti-racist education in our school. I would like to direct my comments not to those that already support this mission, but instead those that feel it is unnecessary or inappropriate. I truly understand how you are feeling and what beliefs you are behind your opposition to anti-racist education. I shared many of those feelings and beliefs myself when I began teaching at Hunterdon Central 19 years ago. I knew racism existed, but I believed it was no longer a serious issue in our society, and especially in a stellar school such as Hunterdon Central. However, 19 years later, I can say that I've done a 180 on this issue and have come to recognize the extent of racism, sexism, xenophobia, and homophobia in our society, including our own community and school. We are not immune from this issue. While multiple factors have played a role in this change in my perspective, I can say without a doubt that the most influential factor has been the 19 years I've spent in the classrooms and hallways, on the fields and gymnasiums, and in the theaters at Hunterdon Central. The frequent words and actions by both students and staff that send messages to our Black, Indigenous, people of color, and LGBTQ+ students that they are not truly equal cause lasting damage to everyone, including those carrying out the actions and speaking the words. The vast majority of our students, even those that use the words and carry out those actions that hurt others, are compassionate, kind, and empathetic, with a desire to treat all people as equal by not seeing color, gender, or ethnicity. You have sent us, the educators at the school, wonderful young adults that I am proud to work with every year. But the reality is, much like I have been for most of my life, they are unaware of how their own biases impact them on a daily basis. We as educators have a responsibility to help our students recognize the existence and impact of these biases so they can develop the strategies and abilities to live their lives as the egalitarian citizens they desire to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is a form submission. It's the last form submission and it's closed, so this will end this section. Sorry if you get your last name wrong. It's Catherine Bagadio. She says, with regard to opening anti-racism dialogue in the HC community, I wholeheartedly support such measures. In the last year alone, our community has been the victim of bias incidents both on campus and through social media, with the fallout affecting every one of us. These incidents and those like it break us down, create misunderstanding and fear, which ultimately leads to apathy, intolerance, and even hate. This alone is a clear indication we would all benefit from an open dialogue. I applaud those who, believing that our community is progressing, accepting, and aware. If this is the case, how can we not benefit from continuing the conversation? At the very basic level, systemic racism is a part of every community in this country. Let's broaden our understanding and be better. Thank you for your time. Anyone in person? If you want to, Ms. Valentine, come on up. I'm sorry if I said that wrong. Lentini, right?
Lentini.
I'm sorry,
yes.
I said that wrong, sir.
Frank Lentini, Raritan Township. I want to applaud Ms. Walsh for her courage coming up here. It takes a lot to do it. And I know for a fact, because I know a lot of your teachers, they feel exactly the same way. Some of them have contacted me while I'm sitting here, as well as a number of people from the community. And I'd like to congratulate Ms. Walsh on your tenure, because if this school and this board takes any action against Ms. Walsh in the last 10 minutes, come back, because we just raised $45,000 if the board ever took any action against you. And that goes for any teacher who is subject to any kind of discipline here for not following Superintendent Moore's radical policies. We'll help you. If the teachers union won't, we'll raise hundreds of thousands of dollars if we have to. This will not stand. This is completely unacceptable. There is no board in the history of Hunterdon Central and no administration that would have acknowledged and facilitated students to group by color or race or culture until this board and this administration, and it's shameful. I went here, you went here, and you know damn well that we were taught to focus on what our commonalities were, not what our differences were. And we get these ridiculous missives every week about well-being and resilience. You want resilience, Superintendent Moore? Tell kids not to go searching for things that upset them on Instagram on private accounts. That's resilience. Some of the resilience I learned here in a big school, you find out that, you know what, there's no one there holding your hand. And what you do from when you wake up in the morning to when you go to bed determines your success. Not anyone else, not the color of your skin, not what money you grew up with or didn't grow up with. What you do matters and not what anyone else does. And at some point, this school stopped teaching that. There is no possible explanation for a coherent plan in which you want students to treat each other with respect, get along, and then you divide them by gender, by race, by culture. So as I said when I spoke earlier, I expect next meeting to hear what cultures, what races, what gender identities, what sexualities are acceptable to this board. And then we can fight about which ones aren't. Because the die has been cast by Superintendent Moore, and as I said, you need to get them under control or it's going to get very expensive. Thank you.
Alrighty, online we have Lindsay Warren. All right, Lindsay, you should be able to unmute and speak.
Testing, can you hear me?
Gotcha.
Okay, thank you so much, President Panico, and to the entire Board of Education for your time this evening. I promise to be brief. My name is Dr. Lindsay Warren, and for the last 14 years, I've worked at Hunterdon Central as a social studies teacher and advisor. I'm speaking tonight as a teacher advisor and specifically as chair of the Hunterdon Central Education Association Anti-Racism Committee to express my gratitude for the ongoing efforts to engage the Hunterdon Central community in anti-bias and anti-racism efforts. This work is not always easy, but it is vital and necessary to ensure that all members of the Hunterdon Central community feel a sense of safety and belonging. Unfortunately, Hunterdon Central has been a place where Black, Indigenous, students of color, and staff do not always feel safe, nor do they always feel that they fully belong. Experiences ranging from microaggressions made with the best of intentions to blatant acts of racist harassment have occurred within the Hunterdon Central community. Systems and policies, separate from individual acts, also uphold institutional racism and bias that disproportionately affect our BIPOC students. Only through the important and necessary work of engaging all members of the Hunterdon Central community in conversations, training, and policy revision can we hope to achieve a time when all students and staff feel that they are truly and fully valued and celebrated members of this community. In order to fulfill our district mission statement that purports to be, quote, dedicated to the intellectual, social, and emotional safety and growth of all students, end quote, as well as our stewardship principles that assert that we must do this work for all of our students, and also all means all, end quote. I implore the board and district leadership to continue this vital anti-racism and anti-bias work. Our students need it, our staff need it, and everyone will benefit from it. Thank you.
Thank you. In person. I've got two more online. We'll go through, and if somebody wants to step up, just come on up, and when we have an open slot, I'll stick you in. Ms. Bernhard. All right, you are good to go, Michelle.
Yep. So my name is Michelle Bernhard, and I'm a resident of Raritan Township and a teacher here at school. And I'd like to thank you for the steps that you've taken over the past few months to start the Board of Ed Ad Hoc Committee on Racism, Equity, and Diversity, to partner with the HCEA Anti-Racism Committee, and to begin bias training with the staff. I'm speaking tonight in response to some of the negative feedback that I've heard recently, both at prior board meetings and in social media. Some people have protested this work because they claim that there is no racism here in Hunterdon County. As a white person, I've never witnessed or noticed any racism in Hunterdon County myself. And based on my experience, I could also very easily claim that it doesn't exist as well. My students, unfortunately, do tell me a different story. Over the years, they've talked about being watched and followed as they walk around local stores by employees worried that they're going to shoplift, targeted by authorities in ways their white peers are not targeted, treated differently than they see their white friends being treated, among other experiences different than what their white peers experience. Much of what my students have experienced is not overt racism. It's just little differences in treatment that they experience again and again and again and again. And it builds and it hurts. On the other hand, I've had white students who are afraid to say anything about ethnicity, culture, religion, gender, or sexuality because they're terrified that they'll accidentally say something that is offensive or that they'll be accused of being racist or discriminatory. This is a problem as well, and another reason why we need to have conversations about racism, equity, and diversity. So I just wanted to come here today to thank you for the work that you've done to begin discussing these topics in our school. Based on what I've heard and learned from my students over many years of being a teacher here, these conversations are definitely needed and are long overdue. Thank you.
Thank you. In person? No, seeing nobody. We have Bonnie. Bonnie, if you could just state your name for us when you come in, because we don't have a last name on there. Oh, hands down. Bonnie, there you are, Bonnie. If you could just state your name for us and unmute and state your name.
Hi.
Hi, gotcha.
Hi, my name's Bonnie. I live in Delaware Township.
Bonnie, what's your last name, Bonnie?
Bonnie Benner.
Got it, thank you.
I am an employee at Hunterdon Central, and I also had to sit through the bias training and found it quite insulting. I think that the training that they had, while I agree that racism should be discussed, I found that the training that they presented to us was almost, it preached what it was trying to preach against. So it was preaching anti-racism while promoting that all whites are racist. I am not a racist. I am not a white supremacist, farthest from it. And I think that you need to look at a different program, because I feel that they were looking at through a different lens, and to reimagine words and to make them fit your agenda just doesn't seem to work. So that's all I have to say. I think the program that you're trying to share for your anti-bias is actually promoting bias, just the opposite. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a couple more popping in online. Noreen. You are good to unmute, Noreen.
Okay, I'm backing up exactly what Bonnie said. I am not against racists.
Hey, Noreen, sorry to interrupt you. Can I just have your first and last name, please?
Noreen Popinko.
Thank
I am
you.
not against any kind of racist training or any program that has to do with that. However, the program we saw labeled white supremacy put us down, and it just was not a program that taught bias. As Bonnie said, it just did the total opposite. And I think that the program, I can't imagine that it was reviewed by a board of ed and approved when it was all against white supremacy and the whole bit of whites, when none of us are that way at all. So I would like to see that program changed. It's totally inappropriate. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Noreen. We got one more online, Bonnie Behringer. Bonnie, you should be able to unmute and speak. If you could just state your name for the record, please.
Sure, Bonnie Behringer, Flemington, New Jersey. I'm a teacher at Hunterdon Central. I've been a teacher at Hunterdon Central since 1997. I would like to thank Dr. Moore, and I'd also like to thank the board for our bias training. It has really opened my eyes and allowed for our teachers to have open and honest, sometimes difficult conversations, but needed conversations for our students and our staff of color. This is something that's been happening for far too long, and it really upsets me to hear that people are saying that this doesn't exist in our county, especially in our school. I've had many conversations with students of color, and I parrot with what my colleagues are saying about the need for these discussions and how they don't feel recognized and how they feel slighted. And I can't imagine what it's like for them to come to school like that and to deal with what they have to deal with. So again, I want to thank Dr. Moore, and I support what he's doing, and I support what our Board of Education is doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Nobody else online, seeing nobody in person. So with that, we'll wrap public comment. We have some more. Sorry about that. I didn't see them. I was looking at the wrong screen. Fabiana Rincon, please unmute. Well, not yet. You don't have the ability to. Perfect. There you go.
Sorry, did not know my camera was going to turn on. My Chromebook's a little laggy. I just want to begin by thanking the Board of Education and giving everyone a warning. My signal is not usually great, so if I freeze out, I'm sorry, that might happen. But I just wanted to say thank you to the Board of Education and thank you to everyone who's provided their comments tonight, because to have a dialogue on anti-racism, we have to be able to talk and we have to be able to hear each other. So no matter what you said tonight, I'm thankful that you spoke and I'm thankful that you gave your opinion. I also greatly appreciate the comments given by the adults, but while many people may choose to speak for the student body, students of color had a very different experience than some of the stories that many have told tonight. These programs help students to recognize our own biases and to help teachers recognize their own biases when they come in to help us and teach us. As a student of color, I feel incredibly disrespected by the fact that those who choose to protect me and educate me find disrespect in this anti-racism training. If you sign up to be an educator, you sign up to protect us. You're students of color, and that's what the purpose of those trainings were. I'm incredibly proud of Central for taking movements and taking motions to become more anti-racist, and I look forward to more discussions like this in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Fabiana. And with that, we will close. Guys, we can't keep jumping in last minute like this. If your hand's up, your hand's up. If it's not up, it's not up. I'll take one more here. One more on the Zoom, and then we're closing it. And then we'll close to anybody in person. So, Suji, you are free to unmute and speak.
Hello, everyone. This is Mark Moulton. I just want to acknowledge Dr. Moore and the board for taking the right steps to identify racial behavior and also looking for avenues around educating not only the teachers who are teaching our kids, but also allowing the kids to have a voice as it relates to expressing their experiences at the school. This is a hard conversation, and I get it, right? It's tough for those who are people of color and those of you who are not. I mean, this is a very hard conversation to have, but quite honestly, guys, it's a very needed conversation in order for us to really experience inclusion and diversity within our school systems. And it's important for our kids to be able to understand the differences and understand the hurtful languages and the actions that take place to people who do not look like them. Because as they leave the school system and they go into the world, they're the ones that's going to shape how our country is going to be in the future. And so, it's extremely important that we as parents, as school officials, support our students and give them the voice that they need in order to have and experience the inclusion and diversity. So again, I applaud Dr. Moore. I applaud the school board. Thank you for fighting the hard, good fight. And we truly appreciate all your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We are closed for comments on Zoom, and we're closing public comment in person. So with that, public comment is done. Now, can I have a motion to adjourn to executive session? Board members, I apologize for this. I imagine it's going to be about 90 minutes. Might be an hour, might be 90 minutes. We're going to talk about HIB case, personnel negotiations, and there will be action taken when we return. Unusual, but there will be action taken.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Right.
Can I have a motion to return to public session, please?
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Can I have a motion for item 316, move to approve the waiver and general release agreement with employee number 4147 as discussed in executive session?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, can I have a roll call vote, please, Jimlyn?
Yes. Dr. Charney,
Yes.
Dr. Nguyen,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donnell,
Yes.
Mr. Davidson, Mrs. Hughes,
Yes.
Mrs. Kellogg,
Yes.
Mr. Nichol,
Yes.
Mr. Richard,
Yes.
Mr. Panico.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to return to executive session for about an hour to discuss HIB and a personnel matter? No action to be taken when we return.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.